You're listening to the Master Wildlife Filmmaking Podcast, episode 25. Nate Dappen is a biologist, photographer, and filmmaker based in San Diego, California. He's a fellow of the Explorers Club and an affiliate of the International League of Conservation Photographers. Nate studied sexual and ontogenetic color evolution in the Ibiza Wall Lizard in grad school at the University of Miami, earning his Ph.D. in biology in 2012. Since then, he's been making science, natural history, and adventure documentaries full-time. Nate co-founded Days Edge Productions with Neil Losin also in 2012. Their client list includes National Geographic, the Smithsonian Channel, the National Science Foundation, Terra Mater Factual Studios, WWF, PBS, NPR, and REI, to name just a very few. And their list of film festival official selections and awards is, well, just way too vast to even begin to read out. Nate, thanks so much for taking the time out to be on the Master Wildlife Filmmaking Podcast. Really appreciate it. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. So excited to be on. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, as you know, the podcast is all about letting listeners know about how you kind of broke into the industry, get some advice from you, some of the trials and tribulations you've been through as a wildlife filmmaker. But let's start right at the beginning. What was it that led you along your wildlife filmmaking career?
Well, I think for many of us in the filmmaking industry, it was not a direct path. As an undergrad, I studied biology and art. So I was a pre-med student and then also got a degree in biology and also in art where I focused on photography. And then when I decided to go back to graduate school I did a Ph.D. in biology. And that's sort of what I thought I wanted to do. But on the side, I was making extra money shooting a variety of different things, weddings, magazine articles, all sorts of different kinds of stuff. And while I was in graduate school, I met another biologist, a guy named Neil Losin, who's now my business partner. And we just had a bunch in common. We were on a field course in Costa Rica. So we spent, I think it was like 6 weeks together talking biology, talking about photography. And we just started doing projects for fun. And that was right around the time that 5D Mark IV came out, 5D Mark II came out, which was the first digital SLR that started shooting high quality video. And all of a sudden, a tool that I really knew how to use well shot awesome video. And so we made a little absolutely terrible film just for fun. And at the time, Neil had this National Geographic grant. And so it went up on the National Geographic website. And at the time, you have to remember that there were no films on the web, no science films on the web. This was one of the early ones. And so it got a lot of attention, even though it was awful. And I won't tell you the names of these early films. So they're still online.
We can't
somewhere.
Go back and look for them.
Yeah, they're permanently up somewhere. So we made another one, and then we made another one, and we submitted to a few film festivals. And again, shorts were still not really a thing back then. So we were winning film festivals despite these films not being super high quality. And as we started finishing up our PhDs, we sort of asked each other, hey, this is fun. We're not terrible at it. Let's do it. And so we decided not to pursue traditional postdocs, and we went sort of just full speed into media creation. In the beginning, we did a lot of projects that were both photography and video, and we did a lot of just only photography projects, and we still do those occasionally. But I would say now 98% of our projects and our income are from film production, and it's been that way now for about 8 years.
And you've really, your company has really started to grow, because I know you have employees now. It's not just you and Neil. Is there 4 of you, 4 or 5 of you?
Yeah, there's 4, and it's been that way for a while. Yeah, so we 4 years ago had started hiring other people, and we've gone sort of fluctuated between deciding to get big or to get small. And we're a small production company, but yeah, I mean we're a busy production company now, and it's looking like we're going to be hiring more people in the year to come. So yeah, I mean, it's funny to look back on those early years. And I think it's tough when you're beginning in this career because there's no roadmap. There's more roadmaps now than there were back then, but I still think that it's a difficult path to go into, and there's very few people at least telling their kids, hey, when you grow up, you could make films about science and nature. So it was a challenge and also very fun to sort of discover that path for ourselves.
Now, your production company has been around for about 10 years. We
started in 2011.
Okay.
So 9 years it's been started. And I would say, we both finished our PhDs in 2012. And that was sort of when, as a graduate student, you make like $18,000 a year, on like teaching stipends and stuff. So, I would say all of our income has come from media production since then. And the first 2 years were pretty scary. And then eventually we got enough clients that, it started to become a pretty normal way of life.
Now, that's fantastic because there's so many people in this industry who find all of us, it's one of those industries where, as you said, there's not a roadmap and no one gives you this blueprint and says, well, you just do this in this way. And within 6 months, you'll be earning money and you're off to the races, right? As you say, you had 2 years of really hard work. And I'm sure throughout those 2 years, there were times where you probably said to each other, what are we doing? Let's go and get real jobs, right? But just explain a little bit about who your clients are, where you're finding your clients, and how you see that in terms of a business model for the future.
Yeah, that's changed a lot since we started. And I think part of that was because when we first started our company, we were also in front of the camera quite a bit. We were in films, and I think people in the industry didn't know what to make of us. They thought, they were like, well, are they going to be hosts? Are they making films? Are they photographers? They didn't know what they were. And we cast a pretty wide net in the beginning, mostly because we also didn't know where we wanted to go. We didn't know what it meant to be a producer. We didn't know what it meant to be a filmmaker of sort of any kind. And so we did everything. And everything, everything and anything. We were in front of the camera. We were behind the camera. We wrote a lot of grants. And so throughout those first early years, and I also want to say, like, we worked really hard those 2 years, and that hasn't changed. I don't think I work any less now than I did back then. I think I have a clear idea, and the projects are bigger, and there's a little bit more financial security, but we're grinding all the time, and we like it. It's a fun grind, and I don't think it's for everybody. But if you like that grind and you like the excitement of creating new projects, it's a wonderful job. But nowadays, our clients, we have tons of different clients. So we work a lot with NGOs, conservation and science education NGOs, to produce advocacy films for companies like the World Wildlife Fund, education films for like the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. But we also do a lot of broadcast films for Smithsonian Channel, PBS, National Geographic, those kinds of companies. And then we do everything in between. We work on short web series for web magazines, and for news outlets like The Atlantic or Biographic. We do branded films for companies like NRS and REI. So we do a lot of different things. And like I said in the beginning, our strategy was really to cast a wide net. And within that net, we only sort of fish for things that we want. So it's not like we're trolling for everything. We don't have a lot of bycatch or anything like that. But we have a really wide net, and then a significant portion of our projects come from grants. So we write grants to places like the National Science Foundation, the Templeton Foundation, National Geographic Society, and our favorite projects are probably the grant-funded stuff because we don't really have a boss when those get funded. We can do whatever we want, and I think sort of our proudest projects have come from working really from the ground up with scientists on those grant-funded projects. Yeah.
And of course, having the scientific background that you have that experience of writing grants, because most PhDs are, probably, 20% of the time you're writing grants, right? Trying to get the money in to pursue a PhD. What advice would you have? I get a lot of questions from people about grant writing. And a lot of the time, if they're not coming from a scientific background, they have no idea how to write a film grant, a grant for, you know, whether it's just a small amount of money to subsidize a film or a huge amount of money to get an entire production made. Is there any advice that you have that, I mean, it's a big question, I know. Grants are all different. But if you had to kind of sum up something to do with grants in terms of giving people some advice, what might that be?
Yeah, I mean, the grant world is huge. You know, there's lots of different kinds of grants. And you know, I think I got a lot of grant training as a graduate student. I still think that those are a little bit different from some of the film grants that we write. And I feel like I've gotten so much better at it in the last 8 years of working on film projects because I just know more. Every time I work on a new grant, I gain knowledge. And so I would say I'm much more equipped now than I was 8 years ago to write a lot of grants. My biggest recommendation for people is that you shouldn't think that you've got to do these things alone. If you're writing a grant, try to find somebody, try to find resources, people who have submitted to that specific solicitation or the organization. Try to find people who've had experience with this. Ask if they're willing to share their grants, because a lot of the times, you know, you start writing and things might sound good to you, but for people who are reviewing these things, they have a certain expectation because they're used to seasoned writers submitting these things. And so for me, whenever I get the opportunity to submit a new grant, and it's one that I haven't, it's a solicitation or, you know, an organization that I haven't submitted to before, I try and find somebody who's willing to share a previous grant to just get an idea about tone, to get an idea about content and style. And then I try to adopt those things into how I'm going to write those grants. So that's definitely one of the recommendations I would give. I'd also recommend make sure you're sharing your drafts with people. You know, I'm like I said, I'm not a good writer, and I've gotten way better as an adult. But I think I'm a pretty poor writer. I don't see a lot of the details. I misspell things. I have grammatical problems in all the documents that I put together. But I've got people I can share those documents with, and that just makes a huge difference when reviewers read things and they see those kinds of mistakes. It does affect your chances. And so those are the biggest things. You know, grants are like looking up. I always feel like we've got a couple big ones we submit every year, and they're so time consuming. And it feels like you're at the bottom of a cliff looking up. But, you know, it really is just, you know, give yourself time. And it's like one foot in front of the other and just slowly work your way up it. So, yeah, I mean, I do think there's a lot of great opportunities out there. And if you are a good writer, I certainly think that, you know, you have an advantage in that side of things.
Yeah, I think that's great. Excuse me, great advice, because as you say, I think it may seem when you first are doing a grant that to reach out to people who have already had those grants that seems almost counterintuitive. It doesn't seem like something that would be worth doing. But that's great advice coming from someone like yourself who has done so many. And also, as you say, the editor, getting someone to just edit, because the thing is, we're all so close to our projects. And when you're that close, you just sometimes just can't see the wood for the trees. So it can be hard to.
I think that's true. And I'll just add one more thing. I mean, my experience has been, I feel like one of the things that most drew me to this career and I take the most pleasure out of is just that this is a community of people who I think are very, very open and generous. I feel like every time I've asked for help, with very few exceptions, people have given it to me. And like, you know, so I think people should take that to heart, that if you're asking for help, you know, you'll find somebody with experience who can share that with you. And yeah.
You know, that's a perfect segue, because one of the things you know, like when I think of you, I think of someone who has really embraced this industry incredibly well. Right. And I say this I met you just a few years ago at a film festival. And I remember you coming up to me and saying hi and introducing yourself, and we got on, we chatted, and it was fantastic. And it was just, you know, there's people you meet who are exceptionally friendly and open, and you are one of those people. And I see it I see that though with your interactions that you have with people in the industry and the way that you are in the industry. One, you guys as a whole, as Days Edge, have been extremely prolific in terms of your films, and they're really good films. It's not that you're just churning stuff out because of speed, but you're making a lot of stuff and really good stuff. but also you are out there in the industry helping other people incredibly with like the media labs. One of the things I know that you do is you are part of the media labs. Now, I don't know a whole lot about this other than did you set these media labs up, or were they already going and you came into them? Tell us a little bit about what you do with the media labs. I know at International Wildlife Film Festival at Jackson Hole, possibly other places as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. First, thanks so much. I appreciate all those kind of things you said. That's really, really, really generous of you. The Media Lab. So when Neil and I first started making films, we were one of the few. We were a couple of the few. You know, things have changed a lot now. Now I think in the science world, the idea of doing outreach is really important. You know, like it's not looked down upon. Back in like Carl Sagan days, you know, scientists didn't respect him because he was the host of a television show. I think that those days are over now. I think now it's important for a lot of scientists to do outreach, and I think that it is appreciated and becoming more appreciated within departments and across the entire field. But at that time, when we first started, it was still definitely in a period of transition, and Neil and I were two of sort of the only people that we knew who were doing outreach and were interested in it. But it was also, you know, at the same time, you've got your NSF grants, and they've got these broader impact sections where you're supposed to do meaningful outreach, and the broader impacts of your grant have to be weighed as much as the intellectual merit of them. And so we thought, well, you know, what would be cool is if we started teaching scientists how to do better outreach. So we first started doing these workshops back in 2000, I think it was like 2000, end of 2012. We didn't really even know much about the industry, but we knew a little bit about storytelling, and we certainly knew how to use cameras at the time. And so we started running these workshops for graduate students and other scientists, mostly biologists. And then a few years later, we'd done this a number of times, and a few years later, the program where we met, in Costa Rica, it's a sort of this crash course for ecologists in Costa Rica. They hired us to come down and start. It's called OTS, the Organization for Tropical Studies. They hired us to come down and develop a science communication workshop for OTS, and so we did that. And then that was still again graduate students, but it was definitely a lot more in depth, and we developed some more curriculum. And we did this 3 or 4 times a year. For various organizations, for various departments. You know, we flew to Duke, we taught at the University of Miami and Rutgers. And then I was at the International Wildlife Film Festival, and I was talking with Rob Whitehair back when he was still in Missoula, and he said, hey, like, I know you guys have been teaching these things, would you guys be interested in trying to like develop something with us to create a workshop? And so Neil and I worked with the International Wildlife Film Festival to create sort of the workshop that we would have wanted when we were first starting, to teach all the things that you need to know to sort of succeed in this industry. Because it had taken us a long time to learn stuff. Not that we haven't learned a ton since then, but we worked with the International Wildlife Film Festival to do that, and we were like, okay, let's try and make the best workshop in the world for this thing. Probably wasn't, but it was really good. And we got, you know, like 300 applicants from across the United States. We, you know, were able to get funding for the Howard Hughes Medical Institute funded it. They paid for everyone to come in, and with IWFF, we ran this awesome workshop. At least I thought it was awesome. And we did that for a couple of years there. And we've since taken that workshop and brought it to Jackson Wild, which, you know, as you know, is sort of the film festival in the United States. For wildlife filmmaking, and so for the last 2 years we've taught it at at Jackson Wild, and again we're really just trying to create this program that brings in, you know, the most talented young people, so that they not only learn important things. It's like a hands-on workshop, not only so that they learn what they need to know to succeed in the industry, but also so they build really meaningful relationships, both with their peers and with industry professionals. So we try to bring in executives, we try to bring in experienced filmmakers who already have their foot in the door, or who are the decision makers, so that they'll recognize their faces when they come. Because one of the things that we found was, when we first started coming to these festivals and pitching our ideas, is that people weren't listening to us. And it's not because, you know, they didn't respect us as people, it's because they didn't respect us as professionals yet, because you have to put your time in. And the earlier you can get that face time, the earlier you can develop those relationships, the earlier your ideas, I think, will be taken seriously. And so, you know, that's definitely one of the big parts with these workshops. We try to just help people understand that, like, you're not going to come in and make a planet Earth. You're going to grind and grind and grind, and then maybe you'll get a short film off the ground, and then maybe you'll get a chance to work on a broadcast film, then you'll get your own broadcast film, and then eventually, you know, you'll get another one, and, you know, and then maybe you'll get a series. But it takes time, and it takes developing real relationships, not just fake ones. I feel like I used to think that networking was a dirty word, but now I feel like I love these events. I see my friends, and I work with my friends, and they want to work with me, and I want to work with them. So we're excited when we come up with an idea that we can do together. And I think that's the core of what I love about this industry, and that's sort of what we're trying to build with these workshops. We're trying to build a bunch of cohorts of people who love each other and are committed to all the same things that the industry stands for.
No, I think it's fantastic, because it is that, just like you were saying, there was no blueprint for you when you were starting. And what you're doing is you're almost creating a blueprint with these labs and giving people a starter and teaching them about the networking side. And as you say, you know, I think networking gets a bad, I mean, you've probably been to them too, you know, business networking lunches and things where you are thrown in a room with a bunch of people for a couple of hours, and you're running around with business cards trying to chat. And it feels like that's what it's going to be like. But actually, as you say, it's really like a big family. When you go there, you meet people who are your peers and people that you have utmost respect for, you know, their work. And over time, they get to know you and your work, and that's how the relationships work. And I think the media labs are a fantastic way to get people in the door of that kind of industry. And we talk a lot on the podcast about how important festivals are, just in general, about having that face time there, being there, even if you don't have a film. And if you can't afford to go, you know, volunteering, there's lots of ways to get in. Tell us a little bit about how do people get into the media labs? Is it like getting, you know, being sponsored to get in there? Is it do you apply and you're picked from a group based on, you know, what you have to offer? What's the way into that?
Yeah, we usually with the media lab we announce when applications are open and you apply, and it's very competitive. You know, this year with COVID we had a few less, but it was still, you know, I think it was like 230 applicants for 12 spots. But you apply, and then there's a selection committee. I've been a part of it a few years, and this last year and the year before I wasn't a part of it. So it's, you know, but yeah, you basically apply and you get in. But I just want to reiterate what you said about the festivals. Like I cannot emphasize enough how important those festivals are. Like our workshop now is at Jackson Wild, and Jackson Wild has invested so much into improving the media lab as well, and giving additional opportunities to people in the media lab, and also creating other programs that aren't part of the media lab but are separate and alternative ways for people who maybe don't have the resources to go to the festival, pay to go to the festival to get in. So Jackson Wild is just an incredible organization. And yeah, so you know, we'll probably open up applications again in like April, maybe March or April. And fingers crossed that COVID can get under control, because I really miss these in person. The online version of the media lab was great and went much better than I had expected, but it's no replacement for sort of face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a tough year in so many ways, and obviously the festivals have done a great job of pulling all this together in a virtual way. You know, I had a film in the festivals this year, and you know, we made one festival, Wild and Scenic, at the beginning of the year. And it was fantastic to actually be with a crowd of people and watch the film. And then everything else was a washout from that point on. So there we go. But the fact that everyone was able to pull it together and actually do virtual festivals and still keep them going, rather than just pulling the pin and saying, you know what, we can't do anything. I think it was a success from that point of view.
No doubt.
Now, I want to switch gears into equipment, because one of the things that I think anyone who follows you on social media will know is that you've got, I see bits of equipment coming up now and again, all this new equipment coming up. There'll be and I don't know the names of them, but there'll be that little like a rover car with a camera gimbal on top of it, and mini kind of remote control, and more recently your drone, your FPV, your fast flying kind of, I don't know what that's called, like a sports drone with a camera on it. It looks fantastic. And the stuff I've seen you do flying through trees on coastline and what have you. Tell us a little bit. I mean, you obviously love new gear, and this stuff can play a massive role in making really good shows. But at the same time, it can be a pain in the backside, right? Yeah. Keeping track of all this gear and making sure you know how to use it. So yeah, tell us first about the drone you've been flying.
So the drone, I love flying drones. Every time I want to shoot flying a drone, I pinch I'm like, I can't believe that I'm getting paid.
You're right.
It's like, this is ridiculous. It's so cool, so fun. I've always been into toys my whole life, and filmmaking is like, it's like, it's like
Christmas
alcohol
every
for an
day,
alcoholic.
right?
It's just, you got to have more of it, and it's crazy. I think different production companies take different strategies. Some people, they rent the gear. We've definitely gone the purchasing route. We own it. We rent it to ourselves. I'll get into that, but the FPV stuff, I found this guy a while ago named Johnny FPV, and he made a couple of videos, and at the time, now FPV is going mainstream and everyone's doing it, and there's lots of great people. But when I first saw Johnny FPV stuff, I couldn't believe what he was doing. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was impossible kind of stuff. And I'd been in the industry already for 7 years and watching people do Planet Earth, and nothing that anybody had done aerial stuff was even remotely close to what this guy was doing. So I tried to find out what he did, and I found out he had just a little camera, like a drone this size with a GoPro on it. And I couldn't understand how he was doing it. So I followed him for a while. And then we're developing this television series right now, and we thought how cool it would be to build sort of this FPV style into the sort of the DNA of the show. And so
someone's got to fly it. Why not you?
Well, I reached out to Johnny and a few other pilots, and it turned out that it was very, very expensive because it's just such a hard skill to learn. It's not like flying other drones. Right. It's extremely technical. You're flying at crazy speeds. There's no GPS system or balancing. When you take your hands off of the controllers, everything falls apart. Everything crashes, and you have to practice on a simulator for a few months before you can actually take your drone out. And then the first time you take your drone out, the first 5 or 6 times you crash it and break completely. So you have to learn how to do soldering to fix things. And so it's been, for me, it was just really fun learning a new thing. And I really invested pretty heavily in it. Every day I'd practice in the simulator for 30 minutes, and that for 2 months or so. And then finally when I got the drone out, I would take the drone out for 30 minutes every day and fly it. And I was lucky that happened during COVID, because I could go to all the parks and there are no people. It's not the kind of drone you can fly around people. I mean, it's crazy. It's very difficult to fly. Is
it a sports drone that's actually made for racing?
It's a racing drone. Yeah. Right. It's a racing drone that you put a GoPro on, and then you use a program called Real Steady to smooth out the footage, because it's got all these micro vibrations. And nowadays people are pushing the limits. They're putting Reds and REs on like bigger versions of these. I mean, there's a couple of guys who are just Beverly Hills Aerials is doing some insane stuff. Johnny FPV is still just totally pushing the envelope with what he's doing. So I think this stuff is going to be like the next 10 years, people are going to see it everywhere. But we are also going to be doing it. Probably just not at their level. I don't think I'll ever be able to learn.
I was going to say, you're ready to put your Red on the drone.
I got a few more years before I'm going to try that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's astonishing we're in this place. You said, it's incredible. You were watching, as someone in the industry who knows film, you were watching, and then you couldn't believe that it was a GoPro. And that just shows where we're at. Something that comes up a lot is gear questions, and, what gear should I get? I want to make it look like Planet Earth. But what's astonishing is just small cameras with the right conditions can look so incredibly good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think like if you're like me and Neil, for us, we get really excited about, the bit rate, the dynamic range, the massive sensor. We like it when our files are so big that, it's like jamming up your computer. It's exciting to be able to push the stuff, but I don't think you need any of that stuff. I feel like you can get a cheaper camera. We still shoot a lot of our higher end productions on like a little mirrorless GH5. It's a $3,000 camera, and it is unbelievable the quality of this thing. Or the new A7S III that's just come out is, it's like $3,000, $3,500, and it is unbelievable what you can do with it. At the same time, I think it's not just about gear. It's also sort of a financial decision for us. So we bought a RED. We bought like the new Canon C300 Mark III, and we've got bigger drones and stuff like that. And we've made back way more money by renting those to ourselves than we spent on them. And so it's definitely a source of income for us. And it's also, when you're working with sort of higher end clients, broadcasters, they want to know that your cameras can shoot with certain specs. And so that definitely makes a difference for getting sort of a higher end client. But I think if you're working mostly for web clients, that stuff doesn't matter at all. And I think, if you expose your stuff right and you can color grade it all right, it's hard to tell the difference between a RED and like, a Canon 5D Mark IV.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much compression on internet video. Doesn't matter what you're shooting on, to most of the time, once it's compressed down for going online, you lose pretty much everything that you ever invested into the sensor in the first place. So, yeah.
And if you don't have the bug, that's good for you. I feel like I'd be a lot richer if I if I put that money in like a 401k.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, that's interesting to hear. Now, the little RV rover, what was that? Or RC rover, I should say. I don't know what was that called.
Yeah, it's called the Trexo Moko car. It's from a Turkish company, and Neil and I are working on a wildlife film, a broadcast film about wildlife in Miami, and a lot of the animals won't let us get close, but they will let us put like a camera there, and we're shooting it all on RED. And so the only way to get a RED camera on there that's, close to these animals, is, with one of these little vehicles. And so, we put the RED on a Movi on Moko car. One of us controls the Moko car, and then the other one of us use the Mimic, which is this amazing contraption that basically, it's like a ghost, like these little handles where you've got an LCD, you turn it and the Movi turns. Wow. You've got a little focus wheel and stuff, so you can just drive it right up close to peacocks or, iguanas or stuff. And it's got this, perfectly smooth, incredible motion. It's like, yeah, it's an unbelievable time to be a filmmaker if you're into gear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, the gear is astonishing. But as you say, you've got to have a very large bank account, or as I always say, if you've got a way to pay for it, if you're buying it because you're making that money back making films, then fantastic. Or you just got to be rich to start with. So one or the other.
Exactly.
Now, thinking of, there's obviously lots of technical issues that can go wrong, but there's issues all the way through that, when we talk about making films. Things go wrong all the time. I mean, when I was hosting right through to being a camera person, all the different things that the struggles you have to overcome when making a production, whether it's environmental problems or issues with yourself, getting sick, or just, things going wrong. Can you tell us about maybe one of the biggest problems that you've ever had on production that has affected the film to some degree?
Well, boy, I mean, like, we've had so many big problems. Like, I've gotten Giardia, I've got elephantiasis, like, on shoots. I've gotten the flu on shoots. I've gotten dysentery on shoots. Being sick on like remote shoots where I got dysentery in Nepal, in just like this incredibly remote part of Nepal, and we just had to travel for like just brutal hours on horrible roads with no toilet. Anybody who's had dysentery knows that it's a real bummer. It's just an awful experience when you're not just in a nice hotel room. So that really derailed my experience. But technical stuff goes wrong. Like, we were just on a shoot in New Mexico, our drone broke. I've almost been thrown in jail a couple of times for flying drones where, you're not supposed to in foreign countries. We've had equipment stolen. We've had our car broken into. Only in the United States, never anywhere international have we ever had anything stolen, but we've had multiple things stolen in the United States. That's definitely a thing. I'm just trying to think of.
Well, I mean, the thing about that is if you're on location and you have gear stolen out of your car, what happened there? Were you on location actually and during a production?
Yeah. So the big one happened in San Francisco. Somebody broke into the back of the car and pulled out the only backpack that would, filled with big Pelican cases and stuff. So they couldn't get the Pellies out, but they pulled one backpack out that had about 15 grand worth of stuff in it. Luckily we had another camera in another bag, so we were able to finish the shoot, but we lost a bunch of lenses and it was, a big loss. And that's a perfect example of why you have to have insurance in this industry. We lost our deductible, which was about $2,000, but we at least got back the rest of the gear. So yeah, that's a big bummer. I think unlike a lot of kinds of filmmaking, documentary and wildlife in particular, you just never know what's going to happen. You can't plan for things to happen. You do your best to plan, and then everything else is improvised. And so many times you improvise and you do your best and it's, not what you wanted or not what you expected. And other times you get incredible stuff or things that you didn't expect that were amazing. So you kind of just have to embrace the uncertainty of it all. If you're a warrior, it's not a good job for you. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
said for sure.
We have stuff going on all the time. It's just, it happens.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and what I always come back to is that when you're making shows for TV, for whatever, wherever they're going, we always see as the viewer this finished, polished production. We don't see the giardia. We don't see the dysentery. We don't see all of that stuff. That's a program. That's a reality show right there, which is why, the end of Planet Earth, that 10 minutes of, elephants trampling cameras and things like that. It's so interesting to watch because the behind the scenes is the reality of it, of making shows. But it really, I don't think I've ever been on a shoot where something didn't go wrong that affected it one way or another.
Yeah, that's right. I think you just have to, and for sure, one of the things that we've gotten used to is we just have contingencies for everything. We always bring multiple cameras in multiple bags, multiple hard drives in multiple bags. We give ourselves extra days when we can afford it, and you still get crazy things. We had this one experience. So our very first broadcast film, we did this show. It was a show about speciation for the Smithsonian Channel, and we were going to all these super remote islands in the Solomon Islands, like basically any kid under 20 or so had never seen somebody white. They cried when they saw Neil.
Wow.
They were, it was a very, very remote kind of place. And we went with our appearance releases, but nobody spoke English. Nobody could read or write. And the legal ideas in the releases, they just were not laws that were, they were not laws or rules or ideas that meant anything to the people in these cultures. And I say that because they had just a different set of ideas. And it was like tribal communities. So the tribal leaders were the ones who were going to have to get, so we got things signed. So we got our version of the release signed. And then when we brought it to Smithsonian Channel, their lawyers wanted a different release.
Oh no.
So they wanted us to get this release. So we had to send a person back to these islands and get video releases. I mean, like, this is like remote stuff. Like, you fly for 2 days to get to Honiara, and then you take a boat for 3 days to get to another island and another boat. They had to go back to all the communities that we filmed in and get the tribal leader to give verbal, to like basically repeat what these lawyers wanted them to say. It was just, those are other crazy things, just huge amounts of resources for things you can't plan on. So, fun stuff to deal with, but also, crazy stuff.
But how frustrating when you're at that point as well, of like your show almost being there, and then you got to do that just to get it on TV. Yeah,
Yeah,
incredible.
sure.
Gosh, well, hey, another thing is personal side of things, right? You do a lot of traveling, and I know you've got a beautiful young daughter who is how old now?
She's 2.5.
2.5. You've
Yeah.
got a beautiful wife, family at home, and here you are making films. You know, it's one of the hard things. I've got 2 young kids, and you know, one of the hardest things for me is leaving my family and going off and traveling and doing these things. For people on watching the video, that's what these little hearts are on the back here. These are hearts that are folded up and put inside my clothes. You know, when I
Oh,
travel,
that's so
and
cute.
when I get there, I open up my clothes and things start dropping out, which is fantastic, and I
That's
keep them.
amazing.
But you know what's it like? You know, you know, things change all the time, right? They changed in my life when I had a family. You have a young family. How does it affect just the way you work? Because it's just, you know, it's a lot of stresses, both personally and on and work, and you're working all the time. How do you make it all fit together? It's a personal question. You might not want to answer it, so say if
Yeah.
you don't. But
No. I think it's like it's definitely probably I think at least one of the top challenges that anybody in our industry who wants to have this career and you know, sort of try to do it at a high level and also wants to live a meaningful family life. You know, my wife is actually pregnant again with twins. Thank
congratulations,
you.
congratulations. So
So
you,
we have
wow.
twin girls coming in early 2021. So we'll have three daughters in the house soon, which will shake things up, I'm sure, in ways that I'm not expecting or prepared for, but it'll be
Right.
great.
Yeah.
But I think you know, if you don't have a partner who's supportive from the beginning, I don't think that it'll work. You know, you're gonna have to choose one of them. But I think if you've got a partner who's supportive, it's like you said, it's just things change, and you have to be willing to change as your life changes. It certainly has in my life since my daughter has been born. I think, you know, it's not just that I'm away from my wife now. Now it's like when I leave, all the things that I do, she has to do, and that's just a huge burden to put on somebody. And so I think it's just about, at least for us, it's constant communication. You know, we fight about stuff like that and we try to work it out. And I think, like, I want to do this for the long run. You know, I feel really passionate about this job and I want to be able to do it for a long time. And I want my family even more, you know? So like, I'm not interested in giving up either of them, and that means there's going to have to be compromises. So, you know, now we're hiring more people and stuff because both Neil and I have kids, and I think we just kind of have to take slightly different roles. Back in the day, Neil and I were on every shoot together. It was kind of like buddy trips everywhere. It was not vacation, it was always work, but it was like, you know, now we're rarely on shoots together because we hire another cameraman so that we're, you know, not both traveling 4 months a year or 5 months a year. You know, we can sort of divvy it up and get it closer to 3. So I think the challenge is like just being super cognizant. I think you have to stand your ground for what's important to you, but it's also about respecting the people in your life. And I don't pretend to be an expert in that. I've made my mistakes and I'll continue to make them, but I really do try to listen. And like, also, you know, I think setting yourself up so that like leaving isn't such a burden is a really big thing. So like, you know, we could save a lot of money if we didn't pay for extra childcare. You know, we can make more money as a family, maybe live in a bigger house. But I think for us, it's like, well, we want to be able to do the things that we want to do. So, you know, we pay a little extra for extra childcare. When I go on a trip, we pay even more to do that. And it's just, I'm sure once I have twins and I have 3 girls in the house, you know, like I'll have to have, you know, 50 more conversations with my family to like get into a place where it's good, and then things will change. Maybe I'll start traveling again. It's all going to change. And I think I am excited about how things are going to change. And, you know, I feel like, yeah, it's hard to be like, I feel like I have met people who just feel like they don't want anything to get in the way of their careers and stuff. And I don't think that's a reality if you legitimately want both.
No, I think that's very well said. And it's a personal question, and I appreciate you giving us your feelings on it. And I like to ask that because, you know, these are the unseen things. I mean, I've seen relationships end with these kind of careers. I've seen, everything from people giving up their careers to be with their family. And it's so hard, and it's a subjective thing. And it comes down, as you say, I think mostly to communication and how you do it. One of the things I'm doing with my family is trying to set up so we travel together. So a lot of the projects we do, we travel. We actually just bought a bus. We're building our own RV from a shuttle bus to travel around and pull a trailer full of camera gear. And that's our way of dealing with it, because it is something that, we get into this industry because we love this industry. We love making wildlife films. We love wildlife. We love telling stories. And then, we love our families. And when those two things collide, because suddenly each is taking so much time, there has to be some kind of compromise. And I think it's always nice to touch upon it, because I think, everyone in this industry is going to go through it. Certainly if they have kids, even if they don't have kids, just relationships in general can be taxed over this kind of work. So very much appreciate that. And exciting times. Hey, exciting times.
For sure. And I just want to add also, one of the things we always tell the fellows who are in these workshops that we teach, I think, for a lot of people who are just breaking into the industry, a lot of them have like other jobs, and they're just trying to get enough work to get it done. And I just feel like, I hate to say this because it sounds really condescending, but like, you're never going to have more time than you have right now, no matter like what stage of life you're in. Like, it's just like, now is the time to kill yourself and get it done, and use all your free time to develop. Obviously not if you don't want to, but if like you really want it, you just got to put in the time early, because once you start getting kids and stuff, like, my free time is like, I get to exercise for like a few minutes a day, and then,
if you're lucky, probably.
Yeah, if you're lucky. Yeah. I wake up now at like 5 a.m. to get a few hours of work done before the kids wake up and stuff. And, so it's just, life gets really busy. And so I think putting in that time when, you may think you're busy, but it's going to get busier. That's just how it works for everybody.
Absolutely. No, I mean, as you say, you think you're busy, and then life changes and you realize, oh, you actually can do way more with the time you have. I do the same thing. 5 o'clock up, I get an hour, maybe 2 if I'm lucky, in to do what I need to do before any other interruptions. And then that's it. So no, it's well said. The time is now wherever you are, because it always seems so hard just to make the decision to go for it. And awesome. Nate, let's talk about advice for people. I mean, that is fantastic advice. I love that. Aside from the personal side of stuff, just filmmaking in general, if you were talking to your media lab people, your students, or people who are listening to this, who are really thinking about, wanting to, they want to take the plunge, but they're in that exact situation of, they've got a full-time job, but they love making films with whatever camera gear they have. What other advice have you got in terms of, just making this kind of dream a reality?
I've got a lot of things that I would have told my younger self. I think most people who I see moving in this industry, they're talented already, and they've got good instincts. I feel like the thing that pushes most people that I've met into wanting to do this is they see that they can create something, and it excites them. They get positive feedback from people around them, and they're like, hey, maybe I could do this. And they take that step, and that's exactly where you want to be. I think my mistake early on, not a mistake, it was just something I had to learn in my process, was like, this industry, it's very important to be talented, but the craft of it it's endless. You need to learn so much in order to become a really seasoned filmmaker. And I don't pretend to be there yet. I a couple of years ago, maybe like three or 4 years ago, one of the people who I consider a mentor suggested I read Robert Mckee's book Story. Have you read Story before?
I haven't, no.
So Story.
I will now.
Yeah, you've got to read it. So it's a book he wrote. It's mostly for screenwriters, for like narrative films. But it's basically it's what makes stories work. And he's gone through and he's analyzed all these different characteristics of elements of storytelling, some of which don't apply to documentary, but most of them do. And I remember reading this book, and like, I couldn't believe I didn't understand a thing about story. I had my
Right.
instincts because I told a lot of stories. I'm always, joking around with friends and telling stories like that. But like that has nothing to do with creating a documentary. It has nothing to do with good writing. And I feel like I've become so much better as a storyteller having studied story. And I don't mean like studying, like listening and watching lots of films. I mean like actually studying it from an academic point of view. I analyze things differently. I write things differently. So I'd highly recommend reading story. He offers these seminars, like all the famous screenwriters have done his seminar. They're like, it's like, I don't know, something stupid, like $10,000 to attend his seminar. So don't pay for it, but read the book. And like, man, just so much amazing stuff about how you develop deep character. How you set up conflict, how you resolve conflict, how you jump between scenes. It's just all this stuff that it's really craft. You can learn it. And I think investing in learning the craft rather than just doing it because you love it is going to really make you a better storyteller. And I feel like ever since I read that book, I've sort of gone into this industry with totally like eyes open, realizing like I don't know anything compared to all these people, I have so much to learn. And it really made me excited. I was like, I feel like I can grow. I can grow, in a huge way over the next however many years and continue to do so because there's so many talented people out there to learn from. So yeah, craft I think is an important thing he's got a great quote in that book. It's like, I'm gonna botch this. I always botch quotes, but it's like, for talent without craft is like fuel without an engine. It burns wildly, but accomplishes nothing. And I really took that to heart because I think that is the truth. When you're early on, you make a few films, like a little short film or something that's beautiful and great, and then you try to work on like a bigger film project, and you realize you're kind of lost, and it doesn't turn out quite with the same sort of, I don't know, essence that you want it to. And I think that's because you have the talent, but you don't have the craft yet. So really, I think investing in that is a good thing.
That's a great piece of advice because it comes up all the time that, a lot of people starting out, they tend to worry about gear. They tend to worry about quality, image, framing, getting this beautiful thing going. But it's been said many a time that, you can watch something that's been beautifully filmed, but if there's no story, it actually is unwatchable. And yet you go back and watch all of the great stories that have been told with archive footage that's maybe in black and white and grainy and terrible quality. And it's so watchable because it's telling a good story. So, yeah, fantastic piece of advice. Can you just give us the name of that book again one more time and the title, and I'll make sure I put it in the resource section of the website.
Yeah, it's called Story by Robert Mckee.
Story by Robert Mckee. Great. I'll put a link to that. And also, Nate, where can people find you? So if people want to find you on, not your home address, but if they want to find you on social media and follow follow what you're doing and follow the films, where they're going to find you?
So the place to find us is, I think it's Instagram at Days Edge or Days Edge Productions on Facebook. I'll admit we are a very lazy social media company. We're not very coordinated about it. And sometimes I wish we were better at it. And then other times I'm like, I can't really invest, but we have stuff from projects that comes up here and there. And we try to post something every week or something.
Well, hey, I'm glad. I'm really glad to hear you say that because I'm terrible at it.
It's hard.
And I'm trying so hard to find a way to fit it in to everything because it seems this day and age, like, it's one of these things that can grow everything. But at the same time, look at the time it takes to fit that in. That becomes almost a full-time job on its own.
Well, we had somebody come give a talk at our last workshop all about building your brand. And she was talking about like how many hours a day her and some of her clients and her partners spend on social media. It's like 6 hours a day to really build a brand. I just like, I think that like there are some people whose business needs that. That's just not our strategy. Like I think we've taken a different route for developing clients. So I would highly recommend, if you don't like social media, try to build your business without it. But obviously it's fundamental. It can totally transform you as an individual, you totally transform your career. For some people, it's like it's their entire career, and so impressed with them. I don't have those skills.
Yeah, I guess, as you say, it depends on where you're going and how you're bringing work in. If it becomes fundamental to bringing the work in and filling the coffers, then that's something you've got to, 6 hours is part of your work day, and you've got to do that. But as you say, I mean, I certainly don't have 6 hours in my work day to be, posting on. My thumbs are too big as well, so I can't hit the buttons. Just tell us very quickly before you go. Tell us about what the last film you finished, and also what you're working on now, as much as you can tell us.
Last film we finished, we just finished it this week. It's a film about this expedition that we took 3 high school kids who had never been in the outdoors on roughly 100, I guess it was like an 80-mile trek through Florida's wilderness. So there are all these kids who are from Palm Beach County, and they'd never really explored the outdoors. And we took them on this trek that was 70 miles of hiking, biking, kayaking, paddleboarding from the Loxahatchee, basically from the Everglades all the way out to the Atlantic Ocean. And so it's just about them sort of discovering the wilderness in their backyards for the first time. So it's a branded film. It'll come out on PBS in the next couple of months. So we just finished that. Excited to see that out the door. It's just a PBS half hour, and then it'll be like a 26-minute online film. And then we're very busy right now with a variety of different projects. I can talk about some of them. Can't talk about others. We're currently working on this broadcast hour about wildlife in Miami. It's like it's like an urban wildlife sort of natural history film, which has been really fun to work on. It's cool to see animals. It changes your perspective a lot when you see animals really making a living in this human-made landscape, and it makes you rethink what role we play on the landscape. And so we've got that going on.
Can you tell us some of the species in that? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, I can tell you. We're filming peacocks, so most of the animals. Miami is an interesting place. It's got more invasive species than anywhere else in the United States. It's got animals from every continent except for Antarctica, obviously. It's got like something crazy, like 30 or 40 introduced species of lizards, a bunch of different snakes, obviously, tons and tons of birds from all over the place. And virtually all of the vegetation that you see anywhere you drive in Miami is invasive. It's exotic. And so the story we're telling is really a story about how these animals from all over the world evolved to survive in these, their homelands, but they've come to America, or we've brought them there accidentally, or we've released them as pets, and they've been forced to make their home. So it's kind of an immigrant story about America. It's our little like political statement about the in a wildlife sense. So it's been really fun. So yeah, we're telling stories about anolis lizards, peacocks, iguanas, variety of monkeys, all sorts of stuff, native and invasive, and it's been very fun. So that'll hopefully come out sometime next year. And then can't say much, but we're working on a large PBS series. I'll just say that much. And then we've got a bunch of short films. We're working on a series of shorts about jumping spiders. We just finished a film about private land, the private land and conservation across the West. So 60% of the West is owned privately, and there's this sort of battle between public and private land. People are like, either selling off the private land, or people who are on public land. They're selling off the public land, or they're people who are on public land who are frustrated that people are coming and buying these large ranches and they can't use them. And I think it's a bunch of arguments that are it's a false dichotomy. Because the reality is that the wildlife that lives on this landscape, they have to survive in public, they have to survive in private. And so the stories about some of these ranches that are really doing amazing conservation work, and basically have set up these pieces of land that are like national park kind of things, and how those pieces of property are really benefiting the public lands around them. So that's another little short project we'll be done with in the next couple of months. And then I can't talk about a few other ones, but we got some cool projects. I'm really excited about the coming year, and I'm terrified about trying to do it all with three little daughters. So we'll make it work,
Awesome. Well, yeah, exactly. You always do. We always do. You got to find a way through.
Got to find a way through.
Sounds fantastic. Well, and I'm not sure you mentioned the website, so you can go to DaysEdgeProductions.com?
DaysEdge.com.
Days Edge.
I think somebody stole Days Edge Productions. They didn't make a site out of it, but when we switched from Days Edge Productions to Days Edge, at least maybe Corey has fixed this by now, but when we switched, some jerk bought the domain and then is asking for some absurd amount of money to get it back. So it's daysedge.com, but anyway.
Don't go to the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that happen in the past too. Yeah, there's always someone trying to make a buck somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, great. So we'll be able to find the films that you've been. I mean, that's probably a place that we can actually go. I know you've got films on there. You've got your short films, your internet films. They're all on there for people to see. You've got an incredible show reel on there that I took a look at, and it's epic. Really gives a great idea of your your production quality and the type of science that you guys are filming. Keep it up, Nate. It's fantastic. You're doing an awesome job. And I look forward to seeing you again at the next live meet when we can be at a festival together again.
Please. Yeah, thanks so much, Jake. I really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you in person, man.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Master Wildlife Filmmaking Podcast, then please leave a rating and a comment. And remember to subscribe to keep up to date with the series' future episodes. You can find out more information about wildlife filming at jakewillers.com. And if you're interested in starting a career in the wildlife filmmaking industry or being mentored to further your career, then please visit jakewillers.com/mentorship. Thanks for listening.